Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg.
I'm Joel.
And the star of the show here is, of course, Teddy, our beloved, adorable baby boy dog. So, what are we here to do today?
We are here to do our honorable mentions or kind of next best.
Yeah. Books that we really liked in 2024, but did not make it into our top 10s. And I will link the video where we discuss our top 10 down below. And I will also link our best nonfiction of 2024, which we have also done, down below. And there will be affiliate links to all of the books that we talk about to go to bookshop.org. And if you want more information about any of the books we talk about, if we spark your interest in any of them, you can use those links to go to bookshop.org, get more information. And if you purchase through there, it gives us a little bit of a kickback, supports independent bookstores, or you can support your local independent bookstore. I am wearing my Powell's hoodie today, and you are just showing off how good you look in blue.
I'm just in blue.
Which matches his eyes. And of course, you could also support your local library. Also, before we begin, we actually just finished filming the video, but I'm going to edit this back into the beginning because we forgot to explain something about how this is structured. My bad. Yeah. So the first thing you should know, this list, Joel's list, my list, they are not in order. Not even alphabetical. We just
random.
Yeah, we just decided we did not want to rank these books. So these are just books that we really loved that did not crack into the top 10, but we did think deserve recognition because it was just a really good reading year, and any one of these books could have made it into the top 10. And you also approached this with a sort of specific way of making an honorable mention list in mind.
Right. So these are just, because I did read a lot of other ones that were ranked higher. They're classics. Brokeback Mountain. We kind of most all know that. But these are books that you probably don't see a lot of. And I wanted to bring some of those from the background to the foreground for all of you to have some new reads.
Yeah. So that is the structure.
Enjoy the video.
Enjoy the video. Teddy will be back in 3, 2, 1, bam. Without further ado, let's jump in.
I love that book you're going to bring up.
Actually, that's misleading because the first one I'm going to bring up is one I don't have with me. So it's a bit of a tease. The first honorable mention for 2024 is In Tongues by Thomas Grattan, which a couple of these books will be things that I talked about in a video I did back in December. Books I read in 2024 that more people should discover. That will also be linked down below. And In Tongues was one of those. I read it in June for Pride Month.
You did?
And it's a messy, gay, chaotic, early adulthood book. And I really enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I mean, I thought I would have fun with it. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did, especially since the protagonist is very unlikable. It ends up in New York City in the year 2000 and 2001, leading up to the 9/11 attacks. And kind of on a whim, he had been living in Minneapolis with a boyfriend. The boyfriend dumped him, and he does things spur of the moment, acting out of hurt. And he just steals a bunch of the ex-boyfriend's money, goes to the bus station and says the first place he can think of to go for a gay man at that time, and that's New York City. And he gets involved in the lives of two very wealthy gay men who own an art gallery together, and just chaos ensues. I am fascinated by novels about early adulthood because it's that period where you're not a kid anymore. You're sort of adjusting to the realities of being an adult and being in charge of your own life. And part of that is deciding what kind of person you want to be. And that's a little bit of the journey that this man goes on in Tongues. And I think it's very interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's kind of about the process of him growing up throughout the course of the novel. And I liked it a lot.
So my next one is Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. I just thought this was a really great story. And actually, I also did Foster at the same time. And I have yet to do So Late in the Day.
Yeah.
But this series of Claire Keegan books are really fun. They're small.
Yeah.
And I love
You could dunk them in your coffee.
the covers.
And I love that they all match.
Yes, they all match and they look great on a shelf. But,
Yeah, they do.
I just thought this was a really great book and had a good time with it. It's a story of a family. They're kind of down and out, poor, and just the man's love for his kids.
And trying to decide about to do the right thing.
Yeah.
So there's a new movie of Small Things Like These that just came out, and we have not had an opportunity to see it. And there's an adaptation of Foster called The Quiet Girl, which is in Irish and is on Hulu, and we still have not watched it, and we need to. So I think Teddy might be getting a little restless. But I am a huge Claire Keegan fan.
I really have enjoyed her a lot. So good books.
Fun. All right, my next one was actually The History of Sound by Ben Shattuck. This was a story collection that I listened to on audio somewhere in the course of the summer. And I did it really slowly. I sort of dragged out the process, and I did that because I was enjoying listening to the audio so much. It is a collection of linked stories, and there's a whole cast of people who read the stories. Paul Mescal, Teddy wants down. So we're going to let him go. Paul Mescal is going to be starring in a film adaptation of the title story, The History of Sound. And actually, I think I looked, and Chris Cooper is going to be in that film adaptation as well.
Oh, nice.
So the adaptation is just the first story, which is called The History of Sound. And Chris Cooper actually reads that story.
Oh.
And he does such a great job. And it makes sense because it's written from the point of view of that character when he's older, looking back at when he's younger. But Paul Mescal does read one of the stories. Nick Offerman reads 2 stories. Ben Shattuck's wife, Jenny Slate, reads one of them.
Oh, really?
Ed Helms reads 2. Yeah, it's a great... They do such a good job. And it's basically a book that did for me what Northwoods by Daniel Mason did for a lot of other people, because I didn't feel satisfied by Northwoods personally. And this is about time and place and history and connection between people. And all of the stories jump back and forth in time. Sometimes there will be sort of a mystery in one that gets answered in another story, or there will be a painting in one story, and then you'll find out where the painting came from later. So it's not really a mystery, but it's just really beautifully about the impressions that we leave behind and sort of the ripple effects that you can have over time. And I thought I did it in a much more resonant way than Northwoods. For me, your mileage may vary, but I really enjoyed The History of Sound by Ben Shattuck, and I did it on audio, and I thought it was great that way.
I'll have to look for it. Okay, my next one was recommended to me by Chelsea at Montana Book Company, called Sipsworth by Simon Van Bowie. And it was a sweet little story. This woman, she's an older lady, she's alone in her house, and she finds this old aquarium on the street, brings the aquarium in, and there's a mouse in it. And the book is her trying to get rid of this mouse and get rid of it, but she's not trying real hard because this mouse is giving her such peace and so much joy. And she keeps it around saying, oh, I got to take it here and get rid of it. But she slowly does it because she loves this mouse. And it's just a wonderful story of kindness and being lonely and having something in your life that means a lot to you, and just a happy book.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, even though she said this mouse makes her so happy, and I just thought it was a wonderful book.
Yeah, I didn't read it, but I really need to catch up to it.
And Chelsea has it as one of her best of the year. So.
I think it's her favorite.
Yeah.
I think it is her favorite. So yeah.
She has good taste.
Another recommendation from Chelsea. I'm almost positive it's her number 1 book from last year. I think so too. At some point in 2025, I will catch up to it because I think it's only short. I think the audio is like 6 hours. Yeah. So either in book form or on audio, I will catch up to it. The next one is the one that you were really excited about. It's very misleading because I didn't have the first two books on the list, so this was sitting on the top. Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. How long have you been trying to get me to read this book? 3 years?
At least a couple.
Yeah. If not 3, it might even be 4 years. Because you read this a while ago.
Oh, yeah, well, I think when it first came out.
Yeah, not long after, if anything, because who told us about this? Was it Abby from Montana Book Company or Charlie from Montana Book Company?
Abby or Charlie, one of the two.
There are a lot of fans at Montana Book Company, and you have become an S.A. Cosby super fan. Is it fair to say?
I do, yes.
Yeah. And in the time since, I have always wanted to read Razorblade Tears, but it was probably about 3 years ago that you read it, because not long after that, we lost our dog Guinness. And I was feeling really sad. And this is a violent book. So but you and then a lot of people on BookTube echoed the idea of you absolutely should read that book, but not right now. So I waited like 3 years to finally get around to reading it. And I really liked it. It was worth the wait. So the premise is that you have 2 fathers, Ike and Buddy Lee. Ike is black. Both of them are ex-cons, and both of them have a son who was murdered. And their sons were married to each other. And both Ike and Buddy Lee did not handle this situation with their sons being gay well at all. They had estranged themselves from their sons, essentially. And now that their sons are gone, they're dealing with the grief over that. And the police have not been able to solve what happened to their sons. So Ike and Buddy Lee team up and decide to investigate for themselves, because they figure that the people that know anything won't want to talk to the police anyway, and maybe they can violently get information out of people. And they pursue revenge. And along the way, this is not just a revenge story. It's also the story of these 2 men dealing with grief and having a full-on reckoning with the fact that they were both very bad fathers to their sons, and trying to accept that it's too late for them to make up for it. They can't make it better. They can't fix it. But they can try to find justice for their sons and trying to find comfort in that. It's very beautiful and resonant. And S.A. Cosby, I believe, was inspired to write it because I can't remember if it was a friend of his or just somebody he knows who had basically estranged themselves from their son who was gay. And he was kind of sick of it. And he'd said, you know what? We really need to do better and love and support our children. So that's kind of what this book is about, but in a very violent and visceral way.
Yeah, he's a very dark writer.
Yeah.
Very violent.
You will never look at, what is that? The tamper?
Tamper.
Oh, well, you'll never look at a lot of gardening implements the same way again. Yeah. Ike is a landscaper. And
has tools.
Yeah, at his disposal.
Well, they're also a little homophobic.
Yes.
And they really had to come to terms with what that cost them.
Yeah. And even, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it.
Yeah. Even as they are trying to make amends with their son, they still have to grapple with their homophobia, because in investigating, they meet gay people and feel uncomfortable and have to reckon with the fact that even after this terrible thing has happened to their son, they still have prejudice that they are trying to get rid of, but it feels like part of who they are at this point. So really interesting book, and I would definitely read more S.A. Cosby in the future, because he has 3 or 4 other books. Mm-hmm. And you've read most of them. So,
well, the one I read after that was Blacktop Wasteland.
Yes, which I have heard really good things about.
It's a really good book. Yeah. This is still my favorite, but it's more of an ex-con who was a robber, got out of the game, wanted done, and he gets pulled back in.
Yeah,
and it's good.
Which, in a way, is actually kind of Razorblade Tears as well, because. As I said, Ike and Buddy Lee are both ex-cons, and they kind of, like Ike in particular, has been living a legitimate life at this point.
So you have Razorblade Tears, going to Blacktop Wasteland, and then my next book is going to be All the Centered Bleed by S.A. Cosby.
What do you know? We linked up.
All the Sinner Bleeds is a really good book.
Yeah.
Also very dark. I don't want to go into what the subject matter is because that's the surprise premise of the whole story. But it's dark, it's upsetting, and again, there's a small town sheriff. He is black. It's in the South where there's a lot of racism going on, and he has to fight against what's happening in his town and bring these people to justice. And these are bad people. Let's just say that. Dark, brutal, violent, but in a good way. You just got to read to get it. But and I've seen interviews with S.A. Cosby. He's the sweetest guy.
Yeah,
he's
he
just big, huggable teddy bear of a man.
Yeah.
And really nice.
Yeah.
So
some point, would you recommend All the Sinners Bleed next, or should I go do Blacktop Wasteland and then do all the
I would do All the Sinner Bleeds. Lona read it, my stepmother, and she really liked it.
Okay.
So.
And S.A. Cosby has a book coming out in 2025.
Yes.
Stay tuned for my most anticipated books of 2025. That one is going to be on it.
So now that makes two of mine. That will be for mine because we have an anticipated book coming out next week.
We do.
I'm so excited about it.
Yes.
Okay, what do you got?
All right, my next one is Fire Exit by Morgan Talty. Morgan Talty is the author of my beloved Night of the Living Res, a really beautiful, painful, funny, we have a theme.
Yeah.
Story collection about life on the Penobscot Reservation. And this is also set in and around the Penobscot Reservation in Maine. You have a character named Charles Lamisway who lives right across the river from the reservation, and he actually grew up on it, but he is white. His stepfather was part of the Penobscot tribe, and therefore he actually grew up on. But the way blood quantum works is that he was allowed to live on the reservation until he turned 18. Once he turned 18, he had to leave the reservation because he's not part of the tribe, even though he grew up there. And that is one of the things that this book is really interrogating, this idea of what does it really mean to belong to a community? Who has the right to say that they belong to something and who doesn't? And what are these rules that we've created that say you qualify and you don't? Part of that ties into the central plot line, which is that Charles has a daughter who lives right across the river from him. And he agreed never to reveal that he is the father of this girl, who's now a young woman. Because if it was known that he is her father, due to the rules of blood quantum, she would not be recognized as part of the tribe. For her sake and for the mother's sake, who this was really important to her, he agreed to keep it quiet. But he's having a really hard time keeping this secret anymore. And he is struggling with sobriety, and his mother is also in a decline. So there are a lot of things going on in a lot of different ways. And this also explores parenthood and bloodlines and what does it mean to be part of a family. And I found all of the different approaches to those topics really fascinating because there is so much to be said about chosen family. You know, blood is not the only thing that makes a family. And the idea of belonging to a certain group of people, and it's just really fascinating, very intelligent, and I would highly recommend it to you. Morgan Talty is also a nice guy. I've had some conversations with him. He reached out because I had been such a fan of Night of the Living Res. So just also a nice guy on top of everything else. So that is really cool.
And I've read both of the books. They are both really fabulous books. Very complex. This one in particular.
Well, I was going to say that, but then the sort of trick in Night of the Living Res is actually very complex too, because it's sort of linked stories, and the way it reveals layer after layer of like how these stories are linked as you get into it is extremely complex, I would say. So actually they really both are, but this is a book that feels like it has a simple premise. Guy is deciding that he wants to tell his daughter that he is actually her father, and yet there are so many layers. This is a book. Both of Morgan Talty's books are like onions. You just keep peeling back layers, and you cry. So, but because it's beautiful. So yeah. So that was my next one.
My next one is going to be Fellow Travelers by Thomas Mallon.
Yeah.
I wanted to read this for a long time because they use a TV series. I did not know what I was going in for. I thought it was just two gay men who traveled together and had a relationship, but they couldn't talk about the relationship. That is what it is. But both these men are in the political arena as well. So there's a lot of politics behind the book. And I still found the book very fascinating. I found the story riveting of how they kind of hid everything, but it's also very painful. One of the characters is not as involved in the relationship as the other, so the other gets hurt really bad. Then when it comes down to the ending, there's a lot of things that happen. It's beautiful, it's sad, it's heartbreaking, and it's just how our community is when we have barriers put up for us and we can't be who we are or want to be. So that's what I found the beauty in the book is how it's a hard road to travel when you have these barriers.
Yeah. And what's funny is when you were reading it, I thought you hated it because you did complain as you were reading it because of the relationship dynamic between the two men.
You're right.
But it sounds like it's also one of those books that just really makes you think. And then even after you finish, you keep it keeps marinating and revealing itself.
It is, but I mean, the one character is almost abused by the other because he really wants more and can't have more or won't get more. And it's like, I can't live without you, but you can live without me, and that hurts.
Which is a very hurtful way to live. Yeah.
But I found in the end, it was a good story, and I enjoyed it. We don't do the streaming platform that it's on, but I would like to do it somehow.
I think you can rent them.
I think you can do them pay-per-view.
At some point, we need to do that, because I think you pay per episode.
Yeah.
But we should just do it.
I know.
And,
And I will cry.
And I'll probably cry with you. So there we go.
I know the ending, so you will.
Oh, gosh. Well, moving into something happier... My next honorable mention for 2024 is something that was in your top 10.
Oh?
Yeah.
Oh?
The Pairing by Casey McQuiston, who is the author of Red, White, and Royal Blue, which is also a fun book and was adapted into a fun movie. And there's going to be a sequel to the movie.
Really?
Oh, you didn't know that?
I did not know that.
Really?
Yeah.
I just blew his mind. The Pairing. The deal with it is it's actually just such a sweet book. And I did not expect that because the premise of it, as explained on the dust jacket, and I really think it's just like a marketing hook that the publisher or whoever decided was a good way to catch attention. I think it kind of does the book a disservice. But the hook is you have Theo and Kit, who used to date, but they broke up. They were supposed to go on a trip, like a food tour across Europe, in Spain, Italy, and France. And each chapter is about one of the places they go, and there's a pairing. It like pairs well with. And anyway, they were supposed to go on this food tour. Because they broke up, neither one of them went on the food tour, and they kept delaying and delaying. And sometimes when you get like a credit, you have a certain amount of time to use it. Now they're about to do another food tour, and this is the last time that either one of them can use their credit to go on the food tour. And without knowing that the other person was signing on, they both decide, well, you know what? I'm going to go on this food tour. And then they show up and the other person is there. And in order to prove how okay they are being on this tour with the other person, they form a competition to see who can sleep with more people. That's the hook that the book uses. And I didn't think I wanted to read it because I was like, that sounds gross. Really gross. Yeah. That is there. And it's actually kind of fun in a certain way because they're both bisexual or pansexual, I guess. And that has a sort of chaotic element because you don't know who they're going to end up sleeping with.
Yeah. Right.
And one of the other things I really liked about it is that Theodora Flowers starts the book female,
Yeah.
and then decides to experiment with being non-binary halfway through. And I thought the way that was handled was really beautiful,
Really good.
and well done.
Another part of the book I thought was fascinating is the first half of the book. Usually they bounce chapter to chapter, him, her. But the first half of the book was Theo telling her side of the story.
Yeah.
And then halfway through, Kit tells his side of the story.
Yeah.
And
that's when Theo becomes a them.
yeah.
So
And classic Hallmark, it's just communicate. If you'd have one good, serious conversation, all this could have been fixed.
that's true.
But no, you don't communicate. You just act.
Yeah.
And I thought it was beautiful how they finally did communicate and come to terms with what happened. And I like the book. Now I'm thinking it was
in your top 10.
It was in my top 10, and it fits there. I like it.
The thing is, it was such a competitive year. That's why I feel like it could have easily, any one of these books could have cracked into my top 10.
Yep.
And I think that's why it's important to do this honorable mention video, because it just goes, I really liked the pairing in the end. It was such a sweet book. The relationship between Theo and Kit is so sweet. And that's why I think using the sex competition as the hook really does the book a disservice.
Yeah. And I think when I read a book, I kind of read on emotions. So some of those emotions are always going to rank higher than some of the books that are probably more well written. But I think my reading year was good, and it was hard to rank them.
Yeah. And I think another thing, you could call this an early adulthood novel as well, because Theo and Kit are very young in their 20s. And I think some of the miscommunication between them that caused them to break up in the first place was caused by problems defining who you are and what you want. I'll say no more about that. But that's another thing that teases out really beautifully. And this is also where we start discovering themes that we didn't quite realize were there throughout the books, because early adulthood novel, but also, and it's beautiful.
Yeah. But the food, it's minimal, but I mean, they go to Cinque Terre where we went once.
Yeah. Did you know we went to Italy?
Yeah, we went to Italy. We went to
did.
Cinque Terre.
Yeah.
So when they were in Cinque Terre, I knew exactly where they were. So it's kind of fun to see that part too.
Even when they talk about visiting a different village, between the two of us, we figured out which village it was.
Yeah.
So that was my next one. What do you have?
My next one is a male-on-male romance, but the reason some of my romances have scored a little higher than others, most all of them always get a 3. This one actually got a 4 because it was The Lights on Knockbridge Lane by Roan Parrish. Who suggested this? Danny?
I think it was Danny.
Danny.
Yeah, that bookish bear.
It is a male-on-male romance, but it's also
Holiday mail.
holiday too. But it's also life as a single parent, trying to do the best thing you can do for your kid. It's life with social anxiety so crippling you live in a house with paper over the windows. And because of these two things, and they come together and find out how to deal with each other with your different anxieties and your issues, it works for them.
Yeah.
And I like a book that deals with mental health issues or any kind of an issue that is underlying in a communication or into a relationship.
Yeah.
There's always a problem, and it's just how to deal with it.
Yeah.
So I found it to be a beautiful book. The story itself is this father is trying to give his daughter the best Christmas she's ever had. And the little girl wants the whole house covered in lights, thousands and thousands of lights. The father didn't have the money to do it. And little things happen and people start giving. And there's also people giving to people they don't know to make somebody else happy.
Which was a big theme in our best books of the year.
Yes, it was. So.
We're still here.
Super great book. And I loved it.
Yeah, I read it and I liked it. I did think for about the first half, I thought, well, this is just okay. It does build to something very sweet. I thought the dynamic at first between the two protagonists felt a little forced because you always have to find a way to get the characters together, and basically the tool is the daughter. But maybe this is also me being a rule follower. I didn't like the way they meet because the daughter breaks into the other guy's house to find out why there's a glowing green light. And the rule follower in me was like, she should not be doing that. And then she just keeps going over to the guy's house, even though she doesn't have permission. He tells her not to. So I think part of me also reacted to that a little bit, but...
Well, the thing in the house was he had spiders and snakes, and you don't like that either.
I don't like that either. So maybe there's an element of that in. But it really does build to something very sweet. And I think going back to the pairing, and visiting some books on our best of list, like the Abby Jimenez books or Here We Go Again, I think we both really respond to romances where people become a support system for the other person, or like a safe space for the other person, and create a space where they can actually be themselves, feel loved. And I mean, I think that's kind of, not to be cheesy, but here I go. Yeah. That's what I found with you. Aww. So maybe it just makes sense that I really gravitate toward romances that have that dynamic at play. And The Lights on Knockbridge Lane does have that with the two protagonists.
Also, with my romance novels, I don't like all the steamy, spicy stuff. And this has some, but it's the underlying of the story, where most of them is the story through and through. And it's like, I'm just, no. I want to read about the relationship, the connection, the bonding.
Yeah.
And call me old-fashioned, but hey.
Yeah. And if the substance is really there, I don't mind. Like the pairing, as I said, has a lot of sex scenes in it. And ultimately, I don't mind because I really believe and feel invested in the characters. So...
What do you have?
My next one is The Country Girls by Edna O'Brien. So this is the trilogy and an epilogue. I've actually only read two of them. I read the first two. The first is The Country Girls. All three are novellas. This looks like a big, hefty book that you could hurt somebody with, but it's 3 novellas and an epilogue. So I read the first 2, and I need to read the third and the epilogue probably this year. I managed to read The Country Girls. Did I manage to read it before we went to Ireland?
You read The Country Girls before.
Yeah. And then I wanted to catch up to the other ones. And then Edna O'Brien died over the summer. And I used that as an excuse to pick it back up and read The Lonely Girl, which is part 2. So I need to read the third part, which is Girls in Their Married Bliss. And what I've heard is that the third one shifts perspective from the way the other 2 novellas are told, but these were groundbreaking.
You really like
novellas. Oh yeah, I really liked both of them because they were published, I want to say in 1960. The Country Girls is copyright 1960, The Lonely Girl 1962, Girls in Their Married Bliss 1964, and then the epilogue is 1986. If I remember correctly, Edna O'Brien was living in London when The Country Girls was published, and it created a firestorm. It was banned in Ireland because it had the audacity to portray the inner lives of women, and particularly young women, and reveal that women are complicated people who have complicated feelings, sometimes aren't nice, sometimes feel sexual longing, sometimes also struggle to figure out what they want to do in life. So the 2 protagonists, you have Bridget and Kate. They start out as young girls going to like high school, essentially. And in the second one, they're in their early 20s living together in Dublin. And then in the third, Girls in Their Married Bliss, you can kind of guess what's going on in their lives. Going back to that sort of coming of age or early adulthood thing, like they make big messes of their lives. And these are things that should not have been controversial, but they really were at the time this book was published. And Edna O'Brien, credit to her, did not back down when there was such a firestorm of controversy about The Country Girls. In fact, I think The Lonely Girls really doubles down and says, oh, you thought that was interesting. Well, here's The Lonely Girls. And the other thing that Country Girls really does is it reveals again and again how these young women again, high school age people, are treated in this very creepy, sexualized way by all the men around them. I really love this. I feel terrible that it didn't end up in my top 10, but again, just a very competitive year. And I really look forward to finishing.
Didn't it start in your top 10 for a while?
It was in my top 10 for a long time.
I think if our halfway reading mark, I think it probably was.
Yeah, because I hadn't read the second one.
Down below too.
I will put that video down below.
If somebody wants to see where we were and where we're at.
Yeah,
that
for sure.
Fun.
Great book. And I look forward to finishing the trilogy and reading the epilogue. And I have had a really good year reading Irish authors.
Yeah.
And I look forward to reading more Irish authors in the future.
Awesome.
So, what do you have?
Well, my next one, and I'm sorry, I had to dig up my phone to find it because I didn't write these down. But my next one is actually a series of books that Greg and I did together.
Yeah.
And it is the Heartbridge Christmas series by N.R. Walker, starting with Tic Tac Mistletoe, Christmas Wish List, Merry Christmas Cupid, Holiday Heartstrings, and Deck the Fire Halls. Going back to what I was talking about earlier, they are a male-on-male romance, but it's all about friendships and getting to know somebody. So the premise of all the books are somebody from out of town, out of state, out of country is coming through this small town of Montana. It's fictitious, and gets in a wreck, gets pulled over, gets something. But then somebody helps them and they fall in love. They all take place over Christmas. So, of course, it's a Christmas theme, and we love that.
Yeah.
But they call it the Christmas Cupid comes in, shoots the arrow, and they fall in love. So if you meet somebody new around Christmas in Heartbridge, you're going to get married.
Yeah.
And so it's a sweet book on series of books on the friendship among all the guys, because towards the end, all the guys are now becoming a support system, a small town of Montana, and you have 5 gay couples. It's rare, but that's where they kind of help each other, and they become a support system for it. So I like the series. Greg and I have done all the series on audio on road trips.
Yes.
And I just like the chosen family they build with each other.
Yeah.
The first 4 books were really good. We liked the 5th book, got really spicy and really almost 75% just sex.
It turned into the thing we don't like in a romance. Where I remember, and I know I've said this several times, so I apologize if you've heard it, but where at a certain point listening to the book, you stopped the audio and said, do these people even like each other?
I know.
Or are they just sexually attracted to each other? And so it was a little disappointing, but even that book had that nice sense of creating community for yourself, which was lovely.
So it was like in the first 2 books, an Australian comes to Montana. So you have like people from out of the country come in. And they all have these like great jobs around the community, and they give back to the community. The community loves them. They help them. I find it just like, this is how a community should be.
Yeah.
You shouldn't worry about who you're sleeping with. It's what you do for each other.
Yeah.
And everybody in town loves all 10 of these guys. So really fun series.
And they are always there for each other.
Yeah.
Which is nice. So
what do you got?
I have another book that was one of my books I think more people should discover. Hombrecito by Santiago Jose Sanchez. This is a debut, and it's very good. The way I constantly describe this is, if you liked Shuggy Bane, you will probably like this. And even if you didn't like Shuggy Bane, this is different enough that I would say you should give it a try. But I did kind of get Shuggy Bane feelings from this, because it is about the coming of age of a young gay man who has a complicated relationship to his family, and not necessarily a good relationship either, and also complicated relationships with his siblings. And that's kind of the Shuggy Bane vibes. But it is also told through an immigrant perspective. He ends up in the United States as a young boy and kind of witnesses the falling apart and estrangement of his family over time, and has to come to terms with who he is and his own sexuality. And it is a really beautiful, wonderful book. This was also in my top 10 for a large part of 2024 and only really dropped out at the end. And it's a great book. I would highly, highly, highly recommend it to you. What do you have?
My next one, again, is a series. My last ones are all series. And it's a series because I felt the author really brought it all together and made them fun. But my next one was Us, Him, and Epic.
Which always strikes me as weird that the last one takes such a detour, but I think you said it makes sense when you read it.
It makes sense when you read it. By Ellie Kennedy. It's about two hockey players. They meet in high school. They go to different high schools. They go to hockey camp, and they become like best friends. And then they had a big falling out. 20 years later, they are now coaches of a hockey team at that same camp. And then they come together and fix their differences, fall in love. So Us is about them coming together and being who they want to be, but still having to hide their true person. Going into Him is one actually really goes up the ranks, one goes in a different direction, and they're not together, but how are they going to choose to be together? And then Epic is just epic, and I'm going to leave it at that. But it's a really great story that follows two hockey players going different directions. They have strong feelings for each other. I just thought it was really fun. I mean, I like sports, and it's just one of those hockey sports bro novels that was just fun.
Yeah. Ready for me?
I am.
Okay. I am actually, since Teddy is up here, I'm going to let you hold this and do the thing where you cover the bottom of the book. I also had this one in my top 10 until like the very last part of 2024, although I read it late in the year. This is Salam Lek by Khaled Al-Ismail, translated from the Arabic by Larry Price. Larry, L-E-R-I, not Larry. Every time I say it, I feel like it sounds like I'm saying Larry. No, it's not. This is a really beautiful, again, kind of coming of age, early adulthood novel about a guy who is born in Syria and is coming to terms with the fact that he's gay, exploring his identity as, as a sexual man, and exploring it through bathhouses in Syria. And everything is very underground because it's kind of dangerous to be out. And for that reason, it gave me sort of vibes of Dancer from the Dance by Andrew Holleran, because in New York City in the 1970s, there was a big gay underground. And a lot of it was about sex, but a lot of it was also about sex because you really couldn't be public about who you are or who you were. So I honestly think this book is good enough that it deserves to be a classic alongside that book. And it moves back and forth telling the story of how Farhat, the protagonist of the book, came of age in Syria and where he is currently living in Sweden with a very uncertain future because he is living there as a refugee. And he doesn't know if he's going to be granted refugee status. And it's about how even after he has come to Syria, he is unable to share his story with the other refugees that he is living with because he doesn't know if they'll accept him. And it's a beautiful book, very well written. So I would highly, highly recommend it. So
I'm going to do it.
Yeah, it's a very good book.
Thank you, Teddy.
Yeah, he helped cover the book.
You're a good boy.
He is.
My last one is Jackie McMillan, a viewer.
Hi, Jackie.
Hey, Jackie. Has told me about this. It's the Dr. Thornton series. It's like 7 books. It's Dr. Thornton, who is a very rigid, uptight doctor, and he meets Royce, who is the town sheriff, and they kind of fall in love. But every time they turn around, somebody's murdered. And then there's another guy in there who's just a horrible person that just makes everything even worse. But it's just a fun book of 2 guys just trying to live their life and having a good time. The murder in each book is actually a fun one to go with to see who the murderer is. So it's more of a murder series book than it is a romance. But the 2 dudes have a romance. And so I really liked it. I did the first 5 on Scribd, and Scribd did not have the last 2. And I couldn't find the last 2 anywhere. And
And you were really upset about that.
really upset
Yeah.
because the seventh one has a conclusion, and I finally found the last two. I had to pay it $2 each, but I was able to finish up the series. I thought it was just a fun series. It was silly. It was fun. There's some great characters in it, and I'm horrible at guessing a murder. It's like horrible. You'd guess the murder in the first 3 pages, and it's like, well, I don't know who it is. You're good at it.
Maybe.
You're good at it.
Sometimes.
So, that was mine.
Okay.
The Dr. Thornton series by S.C. Wynne.
All right. Well, I have 2 more.
Do it.
And the first one is another book from my books that more people should discover. I think Teddy might want Down again. May I hand this to you for a second while I put him down? It's Do Tell by Lindsay Lynch. And
this sounds fun.
it is fun. So I could totally see this being adapted into a film. And with just a few tweaks to the story being kind of Devil Wears Prada-esque. That makes it sound like this is a fluffy book, and it is not a fluffy book at all. It is very intelligent. But this is set in old Hollywood. I love anything to do with old Hollywood, set within the studio system, and it's about how the studio system controlled your life if you signed on for it. And you have a protagonist named Edie who has been a contracted player with a fictional studio, and her contract is coming to an end, and she knows that they are not going to renew it because now she's in her 30s, heaven forbid, and she does not have the level of success that it would take for a Hollywood studio to renew a contract at that age for a woman. So she is trying to figure out what her next step is. The inciting incident is that there's an accusation of sexual assault at a party. The description of the book tells you where Edie's story goes, but I feel like it's more fun to read the book and let where she ends up unfold. But ultimately, this is a story about Hollywood. It's about complicity, because to succeed in the studio system, you have to go along to get along. To succeed where she ends up, you seem like an outsider, slinging arrows of truth, but you also need the support and collaboration of the system in order to succeed. So it's about complicity in complex ways like that. And it is a good historical fiction because it doesn't approach any of these topics with a sort of modern moralizing about it. There are no easy fixes to any of these situations. And this is a debut novel from Lindsay Lynch. I can't wait. I know she's writing another one because she works at Parnassus, which is Ann Patchett's bookstore in Nashville. She is the adult book buyer at Parnassus. And occasionally she'll take a week off to work on her novel or something like that. So she's got something else coming out, and I cannot wait to see what it is. And I got it from the library and read the first chapter and knew, I want to have a copy. Yeah.
You ran right out and got it.
Called Parnassus and ordered it. And because she works there, all of the copies that they have are signed. And they asked me, well, she's actually here today. Do you want her to personalize it? And me being me, I was like, you don't have to go to any trouble. Every time I have called them, they have such great customer service. The person was like, it's really not trouble. She's here. All I have to do is, and she loves to sign the book. So I was like, okay, well, my name is Greg. So she wrote, "To Greg, let's gossip, Lindsay Lynch." And I love it. So I can't wait to see what her next book is. I highly recommend this. It was a lot of fun. And, you don't have anything else, do you?
No, but I do have a fun fact.
Yeah? What?
One of our absolute favorite movies, and apparently we do this every New Year's Eve with a bottle of champagne, is to watch The Devil Wears Prada.
Yeah. So every New Year's
Eve, bottle of champagne, and we can quote probably 80% of it.
Yeah, if not more.
If not more.
Yeah.
And I think we quote it probably daily, if not weekly.
Yeah.
Throughout the year.
All the time.
Yeah.
Great
we have
movie.
fun with it.
Great movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a fun fact.
Yeah. It was a fun fact for me because I didn't realize that it was a tradition. So it was my therapist who pointed this out. Yeah. I had an appointment with her on New Year's Eve, actually, in the morning. And she asked, well, I just want to know if you're going to be doing your New Year's Eve tradition. And I was like, what tradition? And she said, Devil Wears Prada and champagne. I was like, Oh, we do that, don't we? So, anyway, sometimes you don't realize the things you do.
What'd you do New Year's Eve?
Devil Wears Prada and champagne. But after we had dinner at an Italian restaurant. Delicious food. And we also watched a Die Hard movie after The Devil Wears Prada. So we put a new spin on the whole thing.
And our other movie is Under the Tuscan Sun.
Yes.
That we watch a couple times a year.
We don't have a holiday that one is attached to, but we
just do it a couple times a year.
Yeah. And quote, all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
So my last book is a tiny little thing, Montana 1948 by Larry Watson. And going back to one of your books, if you like small things like these, read Montana 1948. Because it is also about someone grappling with a situation where there's a systemic wrong that is happening. And he wants to do the right thing, but the system doesn't want him to do anything. And the other people in the town don't want him to do anything about it. Because to them, it's easier to just let the bad thing keep happening than it is to try to get rid of it. So it has that same sort of ethical conundrum, but obviously it is set in Montana in 1948. And the protagonist of the book is looking back at this summer from many years in the future. And he it is sort of a coming of age story in that he sees this as the pivotal year where he became an adult because of everything that happened. And it makes sense when you get to the end. That's all I will say about it. I think you should read it and discover it for yourself. And one thing I can't wait to read this year, I got a copy of the sort of companion book. It's not really a sequel. It is about the same length, but it's a short story collection by Larry Watson called Justice that is set in the same town and has people, like characters from this story appearing in it. So it sort of elaborates on the childhoods of some of the people who are adults in Montana 1948 and so on and so forth. And I cannot wait to read that in 2025. Montana 1948, really great book, as are all of these. That's our honorable mentions.
That was a lot.
It was a lot.
It was fun.
We're a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's been fun. Stay tuned for our worst reads of 2024. We'll try to be a little positive about that. And then I think we'll also, you agreed to do a video with me where we talk about stats.
I love
from
stats.
our readings. Yeah, there may be spreadsheets involved.
Pretty spreadsheets.
Yeah, he loves a spreadsheet. So we will be doing that. Stay tuned for more. But as always, we really appreciate your time with these videos and the enthusiasm we've been getting in the comments.
Yeah, thank you for all of them.
Yeah, the love and the support and everything. Y'all are the best. And even if this is the first video of mine or ours that you have ever watched. So we appreciate you, and we will be back. Until next time, happy reading.
Happy baking.